Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our fourth GSA Practice Lecture Series. My name is Emmanuel Ngambule. I am an associate professor here at the Graduate School of Architecture at the University of Johannesburg. So the GSA Practice Lecture Series foregrounds critical reflections on the modes, methods, and ethos of contemporary architectural creative practice. Our invited guests are asked to articulate the frameworks through which their practices operate. They address questions of structure, of authorship, of pedagogy, and process in their own work. So the series privileges reflection over presentation. It encourages a deeper consideration of the conditions and challenges, ambitions that shape architectural and broader cultural production today. As you have noticed in the past, our guest speakers is a combination of architects and also people from other fields, because all of these fields are feeding into the practice of architecture. So today's lecture is by Khensani Maluleke. And again, to alert you that our next lecture will be by Greg Kantz, which will be next Tuesday on the 12th of August, 2025. So Khensani Maluleke is the principal heritage consultant. He's the founder and managing director of Khensani Heritage Consulting. He's a seasoned heritage management specialist with nearly 30 years of experience in the heritage, museum, and cultural landscape sectors. And that's both within South Africa and also internationally. He's the founder and managing director of Khensani Heritage Consulting, a heritage management firm which works in South Africa but also internationally. He offers expertise in feasibility studies for heritage projects. He develops policy for heritage. He does heritage impact assessments, does strategic planning, and also project management. Khensani's professional journey began in 1996 at the Transnet Heritage Foundation, where he was serving as a curator. He oversaw research there, exhibitions, outreach and other outreach programs. He then went to become an inaugural heritage manager at the Freedom Park Trust in 2000. And some of you know Freedom Park, which is in Pretoria. And then he led the development of the foundational concept document for the iconic national heritage sites in Tshwane, that is Pretoria. And his work involved international consultation and study tours across Europe, North America, and Africa. In 2003, he then co-founded Matimu Heritage Solutions, which was one of the first Black-owned heritage consulting firms in South Africa, then later established Khensani Heritage Consulting in 2007. Under his leadership, the firm has delivered over 500 heritage projects, including work on World Heritage Sites, Liberation Heritage Initiatives, and projects for international organizations such as UNESCO and ICROM. Khensani holds a BA degree in Education and History from the University of the North, which now we know as University of Limpopo. And he also has a postgraduate diploma in Heritage and Museum Studies from the University of Pretoria, and a postgraduate diploma in strategic marketing from the University of Hull in the UK. Khensani has served in various leadership and advisory roles, including being the chairperson of the Robben Island World Heritage Site in Cape Town, the national chairperson of the South African Geographical Names Council, a trustee for the Johannesburg Heritage Trust, and also a member of the Heritage Permit Applications Committee, or SARA, in Gauteng. He's also a member for the development of South Africa's National Museum Policy. In addition to his consultancy work, Khensani has also contributed as a lecturer and a guest speaker at several academic institutions, including University of Pretoria, University of the Western Cape, and the University of Witwatersrand. His extensive international experience spans countries such as the US, the UK, France, Senegal, Kenya, Mauritius, Tanzania, Namibia, Mozambique, and others. So Khensani's work really touches a number of countries and is relevant in a number of countries. This positions him as a thought leader in cultural heritage, in memory, and nation building. Now, before I hand over to our guest speaker, I would like to go through our house rules. I would ask you all to please switch off your mics and videos during the presentation. You will have a chance at the end of the presentation to ask questions. I will encourage you to ask questions by posting on our chat of this team meeting, but you may also raise up your hand. So we'll watch out for hands being raised out. We also do encourage you to speak out and ask questions audibly and just engage with the guest speaker. For those who would like to claim for CPD points, we will make a link for the form available towards the end of the lecture. So please stay tuned until the end of the lecture. Then we will just post the link on the chat. Yeah, without further delay, I would like to hand over to Khensani. Please, Khensani, you may proceed.
Thanks, Prof. For a moment, I was not sure if you were talking about me, but thank you for those kind words. Good evening, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, friends, and all people who managed to come and grace this occasion. When I was preparing this short presentation, I was really not so sure of what to share, given, I think, the number of years that I have been working in the sector. 30 years, condensing that to 45 minutes. But I will take you through my journey, as Prof has shared with you my short bio. It all started in, I think, 1991, when I had completed my studies, my junior degree in 1990. And 1991, I started teaching. And the subjects that I taught were English and history. And history has always been my favorite subject. And I really tried to make it a lively subject. By this, I mean, I used to take students on excursions, going to Smart's house in Pretoria, visiting heritage sites, something that was unpopular during that time. And I think that really inculcated some kind of heritage interest in me, because each time I would have conversation with colleagues to say, when they take my science colleagues, when they take their students to laboratory to prove this and that, I would say to them, we also have labs, and these labs are your museums and heritage sites. And I think it really made my teaching very, very interesting, to an extent that I inquired if there was a qualification that one can really take in order to deepen one's understanding of heritage. And I think during those times, there used to be a book called My Career or Your Ban, which most of the libraries in our secondary schools were shared. So I'll page through those books until I saw museum curatorship. And I think Pretoria University was the only university offering that program. It's a program that started in 1976. So they had a postgraduate diploma in heritage and museum study. So in '93, I enrolled. The course was offered on Fridays and Saturdays. So after knocking off at work on Friday, I'll board a train from Soweto going to Pretoria. And I'll then start my lectures around 5 and will go up to 9. And I will book maybe at a local guest house. And sometimes due to lack of resources, I would kill time with security guards at the guarding gates until the next morning and attend on Saturday. The course was offered in Afrikaans. By this I mean that I really was one of the 2 people who enrolled for that program. It was really not an easy program in the sense that I remember buying this dictionary, the Tshwane word book, English and Afrikaans. So I spent a lot of time translating from Afrikaans to English, and at times it would take quite some time to make sense out of what I was really translating. And it went on and on. I think I was able to cope, even though it really was not easy, because Afrikaans was really not the best language at the time. And I think one had some kind of attitude towards the language, but I think I grew to appreciate Afrikaans, given the fact that when you compare English to Afrikaans, you realize that Afrikaans is not as intricate as English. But my first lecture, I think it's something that I need to share with you. We were doing museums in Europe, and our lecturer said, I think she said that in Afrikaans to say, these are Brits museums. So my recollection of Brits was limited to Brits in the Northwest, because I said, if these museums are museums in Brits, I've been to Brits, but I've never seen this kind of museums, only to find that Brits in Afrikaans meant Britain in English. But yeah, so I completed the program, and I did that when I was still teaching. So in 95, 96, I joined Transnet. I can say that I'm a man of many firsts, because I was the first group of people or persons who did the museum study, a first Black person to be in the middle management team of Transnet Heritage Foundation, also the first person to be the inaugural manager of Freedom Park Heritage Trust where we started developing the concept to get Freedom to where it is today, and also part of the first group to set up businesses in heritage studies. So I think one can say that I have somehow pioneered this heritage journey, and I've always had the thought, because before 94, all this, I think most of this happened before 94, where I said to myself that the future that we are anticipating should find us ready with particular type of skills and knowledge. And I realized when I started working in the sector that indeed it was a minefield, because there was a need for us to transform the landscape in terms of the narrative, museum practices, thoughts, and what have you. So the background that I gained in Pretoria and working for Transnet really assisted me. But what is also of interest is that during my teaching days, I would try to encourage learners to, in the form of activities, that is having a lot of activities. And those activities included, in one instance, a joke that I always like telling is that I said to my learners that they should bring old objects for discussion in one of our history classes. And to my surprise, this little boy brought her grandmother to school on that day. You know, I was a bit surprised because I said to them that they should bring objects, but he opted to bring his grandmother. So he said, my grandmother has some fascinating stories to tell. And I think she was allowed, I think, to share those stories. And I think it's only now, or it made sense at a later stage, that this was an oral history experience that the boy was bringing to the class. And I think that was very, very profound. Something that I think we now popularizing it through indigenous knowledge system, oral history studies. I think this has been part of who we are as Africans. So working for Transnet, I think, was really an experience that one really wanted to gather, because I was with Transnet for a period of about 4 years, responsible for research and being part of contributing to speeches that were presented by CEOs and the like. I think we were that team that will prepare documents in terms of the establishment of lines, how they operated and the like. And also there was a museum which we needed to provide with research information at all times. So those were highlights. We ran outreach programs like the Grahamstown Festival, where we had a train. I will take responsibility for that. When the museum relocated to George, I was part of the team that assisted in all of that, particularly in setting up your temporary exhibitions and what have you. So in the year 2000, I then joined Freedom Park as a heritage manager. And it really was not an easy task, given, I think, the landscape at the time, because there was a need to have new structures, new monuments that will reflect the history and heritage of the country. And Freedom Park was such a platform. So that, I think I'll get to that as we progress. So how I have punctuated my presentation is that looking at the periodization of the heritage sector from 1994 to 1925, which is 1995, which is 1994 to 1925, that is the period that I will be looking at. And I think there are a number of segments. The first part dealt with the transition, that is the transition period, how we reframe heritage. Because you'll know that before 94, we had the National Monuments Council and Act, and we also had the National Monument Council, which in the new dispensation or post-94 was replaced by the National Heritage Resources Act. We also had the South African Heritage Resources Agency, given the fact that the National Heritage Resources Act made provision for the establishment of the Heritage Act. So these are new institutions that we started to establish in 1994. And I think the period of transition had to do with redress, had to do with transformation, and had to do with foundational policy development. And one can say that from a heritage sector point of view, in 1996, we had the white paper on arts, culture, and heritage. And that period came with its own challenges. And the challenges of transition were to dislodge apartheid and come up with the heritage narrative, integrating previously excluded communities, institutional restructuring, where we had institutions like Iziko, where we had Ditsong in the Gauteng province. And in terms of the achievements, we had the SARA Act, we had the Heritage Day in 1920, that is on the 24th of September. We had a constitution which included heritage in itself. So during that time, I haven't established, because I was still working. It's only when we looked at the second phase of this periodization period, that is 2001 to 2010, where one refers to this period as the period of consolidation and symbolic nation building. And this period had to do with commemoration and memorialization, monument building and symbolic redress, and promotion of cultural tourism. So a lot of planning, I think, took place around that time. And it was during that time when my colleague and I formed Matimo Heritage Solutions to try and challenge the apartheid stereotypes in terms of how information was presented. And I think we did quite a lot of interesting projects, because projects during those times related to policy. They also related to development, because we did a lot of content creation through research, the development of museum policy, because I think when one looks at institutions like Freedom Park, you will agree with me that there were a lot of foundational policies that needed to be developed. Your collecting policy, your stakeholder policies, something that was really unpopular at the time. So what kept our practice going during that time was the issue of developing policies, developing terms of reference for institutions that wanted to invite service providers to render certain services. So we did quite a lot of work around that. The challenges associated with this period, that is 2001 to 2010, included balancing nation building with recognition of divisive practices that existed. Surely there was limited capacity and new funding for newly established heritage bodies. So these are some of the challenges that were experienced at the time. And also managing contested sites and histories, because you will recall that a lot of work was done at national level, but at provincial and local level, not much was really happening, because in that one can say that the approach has always been top down as opposed to being bottom up. That is why you find that a lot of structures that were built during that time, they may not necessarily have enjoyed much support in the township. That is why when there are protests, you find people targeting such institutions and libraries. This is my personal view, that if maybe some of these things were done at a lower level and cascaded or taken up, then maybe that could have accounted to us having some of the sites that are really not managed at local government level. And I also need to say that there are quite a number of sites within communities that have not been identified, that have not been declared, which I think communities are coming up to say these are sites that resonate with our own experiences, resonate with our own values. And in terms of achievements, one can say that there are quite a number of projects that came to light the period 2001 to 2010. And I think one, it's the construction of Freedom Park, the Congress of the People site in Kliptown, Constitution Hill. There were quite a number of projects. And I think some of these projects, we were of service because we will assist with this or that. And there was also the recognition of intangible heritage, because it was during this period where I managed to set up my own business. I think that was in 2007. When Matimo Heritage Solutions ceased to exist, and I took the practice to the next level, where I felt that there was a lot to offer. And if we look at the third phase, the 2011 to 2019, this is the era that had to do with contestations, the issue of decolonialization and community participation. And I think in that, there was that yearning or longing to look at how best we decolonize heritage, the issue of youth activism, social movements, community-driven initiatives. I think we had quite a lot of that. And I think looking at my practice in terms of the projects that I was doing, they became a bit different, because from policy and strategy, one started to do mainstream heritage in terms of content, in terms of museum planning, conceptualization of institutions, looking at African practices and the like. Because when I was at Freedom Park, I think maybe that's where it really sparked my interest to say, what kind of an institution do we want to establish? And in terms of the concept that we developed, we were able, or I was able, to traverse the continent, meeting influential people who were thought leaders in the area of heritage. Because I remember meeting the contributing editor of the General History of Africa, that is Professor Bethwell Ogot, who was at Maseno University in, is it Ghana, is it Kenya or Uganda? And we discussed at length the concept in terms of saying, does it really reflect the values that we want to espouse as Freedom Park? And I think there were valuable lessons learned from that experience to say that South Africa is part of the continent, because at times we feel that we are really not part of Africa. And I think he accentuated the fact that in whatever we do, I think we really need to carry that African spirit. So I think if you look at the projects that one started doing from 2011 to 2019, a lot of them had to do with international projects, because that's when I did work for ICROM. I also did work for UNESCO in terms of tentative listing, and also assisting with the preparation of nomination dossiers. And locally, Robben Island will do management planning, will do strategic planning. When it comes to sites like Mapungubwe, then we will do the restoration program. So I think there is a lot that one did around those sites within the country. And I also had the privilege of doing work in Mozambique. And at that time, there was only one World Heritage Site, that is the island of Mozambique. I did quite a lot of training for UNESCO staff members in the island of Mozambique. There's also Sihlabatebe in Lesotho, where I was invited as a guest, I think just to give an overview of the programs that they may have, that they have done to date. So that I think accounts for the period 2011 to 2019. And I think this period came with its own challenges, because there was growing public distrust in official narratives and institutions. And I think this can be seen in places like Kliptown, where there's fierce contestation between the square and the community around the square, where you find that priorities are different, because people are looking at basic services, and the square, it's something that is different. Though when it was built, the idea then was to make sure that it was going to bring development and uplift the area. The underfunding and neglect of rural community heritage, I think that is quite key. But what is happening with this is that institutions such as the National Heritage Council are trying their utmost best to fill in the gaps in terms of providing funding for these programs. But one can also say that the issue of underfunding and capacity really makes it a challenge for some of these institutions, because a lot of their budget sometimes go into salaries instead of maybe looking after the institution. And I think that can be attributed to how some of these institutions have been planned, because if you look at how the new developments or how new structures came into being, you will agree with me that it's a high cost and high impact, where I think government had resources then, and we had your beautiful institutions that came up. So your high cost, and if you were to look at what is happening in the present day, government, I think, has really looked at this approach to say maybe there needs to be high impact, but using low cost in order to manage these structures. And I think this is a debate that one can have with architects, because I think in the process of planning, I think one works with a lot of architects, and I think debating these issues in terms of the future sustainability of these institutions versus how maybe future resources could be allocated. Increasing tensions around colonial and apartheid heritage, and I think it's only now that these discourses are coming to the surface. The roads must fall, I think, is one such example where people are saying that we need to do away with this colonial heritage. So it is a period that I think one has done quite a bit in terms of feasibility studies around liberation heritage sites. And I think these includes projects such as the development of Matola Museum, as well as the Garden of Remembrance, because I was commissioned by the National Department to conduct research that helped inform the development of the museum. And I always say that development makes heritage. And in the course of doing our work, the challenge that we have is that heritage is anti-development, and I don't think that is true. I think some kind of middle ground needs to be really worked out in terms of understanding the importance of heritage vis-a-vis development, because I think we really can phrase anything and everything in the name of heritage. So these kind of discussions, in my view, are important. Achievements related to this 2011-2019 period, heightened critical debate around heritage. Because when I do heritage impact assessments and Section 34 applications, where you find that a person has bought a house that is older than 60 years in a formerly white area, when this person wants to demolish the house or make alterations, the question that comes from stakeholders, or let me say stakeholders, yes, or the community, is that this is an important heritage building because of its significance. And you find at times that this significance doesn't resonate that well with this person who bought this property. So people end up asking questions as to whose heritage am I supposed to look after? So these are topical issues within our profession to say, whose heritage are we really taking care of? And I think with greater understanding and the inclusivity that the Heritage Act talks about, I think answers surely should be generated or should be taken into consideration. The other issue that is of interest that emerged during that period was the emergence of grassroots heritage projects and unofficial memorials. I think we have quite a lot in the townships. There's one in Deep Kloof, I think is Vuyani Mapaka Memorial, where the community felt that this person is of importance to us, and as a result, we need to take care of this site. But the challenge with these sites is vandalism, because they are not protected, and I think there's a need for public education to educate people. Just yesterday, I was fascinated by a clip that I received of a story of a young man who has put together a heritage register in the city of Johannesburg, and a lot of sites that are not known have been well documented. So it really indicates to us that level of interest in terms of what people can do in their space or townships. Because if we really don't preserve this heritage, we really run a risk that in 100 years, our story will fall in the category of myth and legend stories, because we'll have nothing to show for what we have. Greater focus on inclusive practices, the issue of repatriation of remains and cultural objects, I think, characterize that project. I haven't done anything that relates to repatriation of remains, because I'm not an archaeologist, and I also need to put a disclaimer that I'm not an architect, but a researcher and a content creator working closely with architect when it comes to conceptualization of projects and giving input in terms of the material that is available to inform development. And the third period is the 2020 to the present day. And I think this has to do with sustainability and climate impacts on heritage. And I think this is quite a key, in the sense that if you look at floods that took place in KwaZulu-Natal, most of that landscape was really impacted upon. to an extent that if there's heritage, the built environment heritage that is in that space, it really may have been lost. So I think it is important for us to take heed of issues that relate to climate change. When I was at Robben Island, the issue of climate change, I think, was also important, where we raised the issue of saying, given what is happening, are we guaranteed that we will have the island in the next 100 years, given, I think, the high tide and what have you? So it is important, I think, to really have alternative thoughts that can assist in terms of that. And I think the digital era does provide that mechanism through your virtual reality, through your artificial intelligence and the like. And I think we need really to take advantage of that, because I think in the event of us losing sight of this importance, it will be a sad day for the country and a sad day for the world, given the fact that they enjoy and consume our heritage. So the documentation of these sites, profiling them, it's quite important at this stage, so that future generations can really know what really existed, instead of this being a myths and legends story. The issue of international collaboration, I think it's quite important, and through UNESCO initiatives, I think these kind of things are just possible. The challenges: digital inequality, limiting access to online heritage. We are aware that we are a society, an uneven society, where a lot of people are not that literate when it comes to technology. So we need to be mindful of the fact that as we move into this fourth industrial revolution, we also need to make provision for people in the communities to make sure that they move with the time and understanding the importance of these tools in managing heritage. Vulnerability of heritage sites to climate change and urban development. We have growing population where buildings are demolished to make way for social housing and the like. And I think that can be done responsibly, and heritage can really guide that practice. I see a lot of this when I do Section 34 applications, where you find that there are important buildings that need to be taken care of. But due to challenges in how we understand, or our orientation in terms of heritage, we do have problems. So urban development, it's a reality. And I think it's for us to really take your guidance in terms of the provisions that heritage does make. Struggles to decolonize museum practices and international partnerships. I think this is quite key, so that we are not overtaken by events, but we embrace change in a manner that will benefit our communities. So in terms of achievement for 2020 to 2025, then I think we can talk about growth of virtual exhibitions. I think that is taking place. The issue of archives, people are looking at community archives, that is to archive their experiences. Digital storytelling platforms, and the phones that we have, I think, are best placed to assist in this regard. Increased attention to indigenous knowledge systems, and I think this can be seen in your heritage policies and environmental policies. So I'd just like to share some of the projects that we do. I think this includes documentation of intangible heritage, resulting in book writing, where there's a coffee table book that we have just completed on the indigenous vendor dances and instruments. I think that started sometime last year, so we're concluding that project. And I think my experience with this project is that there is a lot that can be done within communities, particularly in terms of how we document and profile these important piece of heritage. This is the Matola Raid Memorial Project, when we're still doing research to develop the Matola Museum. We were able to get archival documents from a reputable newspaper called Noticias, where they had pictures depicting the houses that were bombed during the Matola raid of January, I think, 1980. And the gravesite, it depicts the area where people who died during the raid were buried. And I think we had about 14, if not 15 of those people buried in that area. And another interesting project that I'm currently doing, it's the GDE, Gauteng Department of Education project in Tshwane, where it used to be a state school, which during the outbreak of the Anglo-Boer War became a prison where people like Winston Churchill were incarcerated. So the image that I have picked here showed the underground attempts within the building to escape, and the plan in terms of how that was executed. And it's a site that it's important, but a lot of us don't see the importance because it has been overshadowed by the library. And my personal view is that the site can be elevated to tell the story of the capture or the story of the Anglo-Boer War and the attempts that were made by inmates, including Winston Churchill, used to try and escape that place. So this project has to do with a permit application because the Department of Education wants to upgrade the space. So I'm still working on the project to secure a permit for the development, but there are a number of options that are being looked at to say, can we use the site as a library and as an attraction that chronicles the story of the Anglo-Boer War, taking into cognizance the captures, the incarceration of Churchill. These are other images. The impact assessment study that I'm doing within the city of Joburg. This issue of social housing, it's very important, and this building has been left desolate for quite some time, to an extent that I think it has been donated to the city of Johannesburg, and the city is looking at preparing it for social housing. So it's a Section 34, Section 38 application that we're working on. And the Samora Machel Museum site, this is the site in Mbuzini and Mpumalanga. The site borders Mozambique and Eswatini. And this is the site where a president of Mozambique, Samora Machel, died in 1986, if I'm not mistaken. Our role there was to develop a heritage management plan for the site to ensure its safekeep and future management. The site is iconic because it brings the two countries together, but it's within close proximity to Eswatini, because when I was there, it took me about 5 minutes to cross over to Eswatini, and it took me about 2 minutes to be in Mozambique. So you could have breakfast in Mbuzini, have lunch in Mozambique, have supper in Eswatini. And there are quite a number of opportunities from a development point of view, because I think if you look at Cape Point, where Indian Ocean meets Atlantic Ocean, it's a site that is visited by thousands and thousands of people. But if you look at the site that I'm talking about, not much has been done in terms of development. So there are opportunities that can be used just to sustain and support the site from an economic point of view and from a heritage preservation point of view. So there are opportunities in some of the projects that we do, and I think we sometimes make recommendations in terms of what is possible and what could be achievable. And the two images here, one relates to a SANParks project that we carried out in 2018. The brief was to develop management plans for Kruger National Park, Table Mountain, as well as the parks in Naitna. So I think it was quite an elaborate process, given the fact that the emphasis with national parks, it's more on the nature side of it. But it's only now that I think the cultural related aspects are being documented quite well, so that to broaden appeal in terms of the visitors. There are important cultural sites within Kruger, which I think when one goes there as a tourist, you are able to enjoy viewing game and also looking at the cultural site. And I can also say that I was privileged to have also assessed the museum at Skukuza, where they were looking at transforming the narrative. A lot of work went into that. We were able to provide ideas in terms of what could be done. The other image relates to the blockhouse in the Vaal area, I think around R55 to Vereeniging. This is one of the blockhouses that existed during the Anglo-Boer War. And the interesting story about this site is that a developer bought this site with a view to demolish and put up a warehouse. We were commissioned to work on this project. I was working with the late Herbert Prince, may his soul rest in peace. The project was quite a challenge because our approach was that this is an important landmark in the area and that contributes to a particular era. And as a result, there was a need to retain the structure. And indeed, the developer bought into our idea where we agreed that the building will be taken care of and a small museum will be built around the site to chronicle the history of the building. Okay, then. So the other project then relates to the one that I did in the Northern Cape. This was a feasibility This was a project commissioned by the Development Bank of South Africa to see if maybe this site can be used as a tourist site. And the other then relates to the Thohoyandou Botanical Gardens, which was another feasibility where SANBI was looking at turning that into one of the major botanical sites in the area. So the takeaway, because I think the takeaway, particularly for students with regards to this lecture, is to say that what really sustained my practice was that I'm kind of person who reads across disciplines, particularly when you are running a business, because I think you need to know how to market your business, how to do your finances, how to do your legal, and so all of that, it means understanding what is there, and also to look at, have a better understanding of the teams that you work with, because you do work with architects, you do work with structural guys, you do work with mechanical and the like. So it does help to have an idea in terms of what these are all about, because heritage is like a conductor, where you find that an architect will say that we want to demolish this facade, and the structural guy will say that the integrity of the building is really not sound. What do we do from a heritage point of view? Do we demolish, or do we look at other measures to restore all of that? So you are able to give guidance and to give guidelines insofar as that is concerned. And for you to do that, you need to have read, let me say, across disciplines, and also to define your competitive advantage, to say, as a business, what is your unique selling proposition for sustenance? In the last 22, 25 years that I have been consulting, what I've noted is that most of the companies that started during that time, most of them are no longer rendering services. So knowing your niche, identify your unique selling proposition does help. And also to say that we need to prepare for unforeseen circumstances. And I think COVID is one such example where you find that that became a game changer, and what does it mean to us? So I think looking at all of that, I think it's important, because if you look at your big companies, where they had these strategic plans, they had goals, they had whatever that they need to fulfill. COVID came, and it dictated the pace in terms of how things needed to happen. And I think that's where us as small businesses are able to take advantage and look at a niche in terms of what we can do. Also to diversify our product offering, because you may find that what we do is really not enough to put bread on the table. So if you have diverse products, you are able to sustain yourself in so many ways. By this, I mean, in terms of what I do strategic planning, I do policy development, policy analysis, policy formulation, and the like. And I've also learned that a lot of what we learn at school, it's not necessarily what we find in real life. And what exists in real lives are those theories, those models, guidelines, and principles. I think they are very, very important, because you can customize them in order to find solutions for things you do in the field of work. The example that I can give is that when you do a project, you may find that it is based on a particular theory, where you find that the state intervention is the most dominant theory. And I think within heritage, we have quite a lot of those theories. Your postmodern theory, your post-colonial theory, your critical heritage studies theory. So if you're familiar with this kind of theories, you're then able to navigate your way through when you do your work to say, okay, then I'm meeting this difficult community, and there are diverse theories in terms of that. What could be the theory that relates to the environment that I really work in? And the last point that I would like to share with you is that, or to remind you, is that in the number of years that I've been in the heritage space, I have learned that there is not yet definition of heritage. And I've learned that heritage is something that we construct, and development makes heritage. And on that note, I think that ends my short presentation, and I'd like to thank you.
Wow, thank you, Khensani. I think that deserves a clap. So thank you so much for that exciting story. I'm still amazed by the story of the young boy who brought her grandmother to class as an artifact. I think that really talks to an African perspective on how we preserve heritage. I remember when I was an architecture student in my third year history class, we were asked to bring artifacts that told stories about our own families. And I realized that I actually don't have it. The only thing I could think of was my praise name, because that was a heritage. Not necessarily something tangible, but it was a heritage to me because it was passed on to me and I inherited it and I could pass it on to the next generation. So yeah, I think that was a fascinating story. And I also got, it was also fascinating to hear that you, in your background, you were a teacher by profession. And just thinking that now you mostly full-time in consulting. And I was surprised by that. Yes, I really enjoyed how you exposed to us the process you took to get where you are. It is very inspiring. Yeah, then just before I open up, I hope you have your questions ready. If you have a question, please feel free to raise up your hand. What I wanted to just start off with is, having worked with architects in most of your heritage projects, could you just, from your years of experience, I mean, you've done more than 500 projects, heritage projects across the 30 years that you've been consulting as a heritage expert. What is it that we architects are getting wrong about heritage? And what is it, or maybe let me say, what is it that we are getting right about heritage in your interaction with architects? And what is it that we are getting wrong?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question in the sense that I think there was a perception that architects have answers for all that has to do with a project, and I think with time there is some realization that working with professionals from other disciplines does help, because I think if you are to do a condition assessment of a building, we may assess one thing but look at it differently, and I think it's something that the architects do miss about that, because I think with heritage there's an added value that we bring. And this value has to do with the ability to analyze different significances that maybe a particular building may have. And I think when you do restoration work, someone may tend to overlook, but a heritage practitioner is there to provide guidelines and principles informed by experience, informed by best practices.
And this is from Althea. Thank you for a deeply resonant and provocative talk. I have very many questions, but we'll just ask this one for now. I'm curious about how you deal with people or institutions who are resistant to thinking, or to your thinking or perspective, to shift the exclusivity of single narrative heritage approaches and methodologies.
It's really not easy, because I think in the majority of cases, this, in my view, has to do with mindset and orientation. And I think an example that I can give is that the period of transition, it was a period filled with a lot of euphoria, I mean to say, where a lot of us did not have, in fact, all of us did not have experience in terms of managing inclusive heritage. And I think if you look at issues of symbolism and identity, I think we really missed it out during that transitional period because we did not define as to what will define our identity from a built environment point of view. And I think if you look at your colonial heritage, particularly looking at architecture, you have different periods, you have different styles where you have your Victorian, you have your Art Deco, you have your Edwardian and the like. But post 95, I think in my view, I can ask 10 people to say what type of architecture defines who we are as South African. I don't think we have made enough effort to really look into that. Freedom Park, to some extent, I think did try, but I think these are kind of debates that we really have. So I think coming to Althea's question in terms of managing multiple narratives, it boils down to the issue of consultations, and I think educating one another over time, because sometimes we come with the mentality that we know when we realize that we don't know. So if we were to learn, listening will be a skill that helps us to really think through issues. And I think the other challenge that we also have is the issue of language, because I think one group is advantaged because they can articulate or express themselves better in a particular language, maybe English language. But when you deal with communities, you need to have someone who will translate, someone who will interpret. And most of the time, you find that the meaning is lost in translation, and people are really not able to express their views to assist the discussion in that particular space. So the issue of consultation, in my view, should not be an event, but a process where we identify stakeholders and we engage with these stakeholders on a regular basis. Because how we do stakeholder management really leaves much to be desired. Because if you do it at a project level, you will have 2 meetings and making a conclusion to say, this is what the community is talking about. But if we can unpack who the community is, you realize that the communities that we have are not homogeneous, and they have their diverse challenges, and whatever they express is really not similar. So the conventional way of looking at that really becomes a challenge, particularly when we do a project. That is why I think the project that had to do with the e-tolls was really a challenge, because it was said that there was not enough consultation, and government was saying that, yes, we have consulted. So was it a continuous process, or was it an event where you had maybe people that were going to be cheerleaders and support what you are saying there? So these are things that we're grappling with as a society, and I think we don't want to bring them to the fore and thrash them out and have a perspective insofar as that is concerned. Thank you.
What is also interesting is how mostly Western developed methodologies of heritage also need to be challenged. And I'm now still thinking about the young boy who brought her grandmother to class. That in itself is a methodology, and maybe extending beyond what the Bureau Charter and Heritage says, and embracing emerging ways of preserving history and keeping memory, whether embedded in space, in the built environment. So I think that is something that we still need to explore, both from a practice point of view, but also from an academic point of view, in how we keep the stories. But yeah.
And I think also with South Africa having ratified the the Intangible Heritage Convention. Maybe that really will take us somewhere, but I think there is a need to really do something about that, because heritage is not only about the tangible forms, but intangible as well, and the challenge is how we integrate that. Because I think if you look at when you do your Section 34 applications and you look under definitions in terms of the Act, you realize that significance is defined in terms of architecture, aesthetics, is also defined in terms of cultural, social, and the like. And the socio-cultural aspects have more to do with your intangible aspect of heritage, which I think we sometimes tend to overlook. There is a project that I was part of when we converted the former president's house, Mandela's house in Horton, into a boutique hotel. We really had this kind of debates to say what to retain and what to let go. And I think that did bring a vibrant discussion within the team and looking at the elements that define that particular space.
I'll take on Sandile's question, and he says to piggyback off, I guess, to the question from out there. Could you speak of your experience in consulting for government institutions? Please speak honestly of what they are getting right or wrong in the preservation of heritage buildings belonging to the state. Are they open-minded or rigid in their thinking?
Sandile, it's an interesting question. One thing that I can say, it's bureaucracy and delay in the decision-making process, because you find that your services are solicited now, and you find that the building is still sound, it's salvageable, a lot can be done to preserve it or to restore it. And only to find that the project only kicks off after 5 years or after 3 years. And by then, a lot of material, you find that have been looted by then to an extent that the building has deteriorated to a level where you really can salvage. But I think there are provisions in the Act insofar as that is concerned, because some may construe that as there's a term that we use where we call it demolishing by neglect. And I think this is done by developers, where you find that they buy properties and they let those properties deteriorate so that they can maybe come up with their developments. So I think the Act has mechanisms in terms of stopping all of that, like the stop order repairs and the like. So your question with regards to government, national government through public works, they try, but I think issues of capacity are somehow a challenge. I have done work at Brian Tyrion, which is the estate where your MPs and the president live. I've also done work at the Union Building. With the Union Building, there's a management plan that has been developed to guide the maintenance or restoration of the building. But when you go to provinces and local government, I think that's where the challenge is, because there is no capacity. And the Act also makes provision for heritage inspectors. And if you look at how heritage institutions or heritage entities at provincial level and local government have been instituted, you will realize that they don't even have heritage inspectors. I will give this example to say that when you go to local government, where you have your metros, you have your district municipalities and local municipalities, heritage is managed by different departments. You go to, it's except for metros where you have a dedicated department that deals with heritage. When you go to your local and district, you find that heritage is managed at community services. At times it's managed from tourism. At times it's managed from economic development. So the lack of dedicated mandate to do all of that, I think, does impact on the issue that you have raised. Thank you.
I think in the interest of time, we have to come to wrap it up, but we have there's a comment and a question. So we'll squeeze those in, then we can start to wrap up. Remember, we'll make the link available for you to register for your CPD certificate. I'll take a question from Bumi. And it reads, I believe that the top-down contribution to heritage is relevant, but may not be as sustainable as compared to, I guess she meant to say, a bottom-up approach. How, in your view, can we contribute better as architects to a bottom-down heritage approach, or I guess a bottom-up heritage approach within our projects? Is there room to entrench this into policy, perhaps? And then maybe I'll just read the comment here, and then you can answer if you could just combine both. This was such this is an unknown user. This was such an eye-opening lecture. Thank you for sharing your ways and experience. I enjoyed it when you said something along the lines of, whose heritage are we preserving? I think that was a light bulb moment. I now understand why certain conversations about heritage can be met with some sort of resistance. So I'm going to close it there, and then maybe you want to respond to the comment and the question.
I think whether we like it or not, the bottom-up approach, it's happening or taking place in an unsustainable way. The reason I'm saying this is that you have government providing funding, inviting people to apply for funding, looking at their own projects. And you get people from a particular community applying for that funding to say, we want to have a monument. They get that funding, and at times that funding is really not enough to make them realize what they want to do. They put up that monument. Their lack of experience in terms of an integrated approach to putting up programs, find that they put it in a land where it's owned by somebody or government, and there were no proper structure, proper documentation that was done to have that structure there. So the challenge that I have is that the funding, does the funding given by government talk to maybe the IDP in a particular area? Because what I find is a disjuncture in most of the projects that are being funded, except for intangible heritage projects, where you want to have maybe a monument. It really takes an effort, because there are risk issues, there are security issues, there are access issues, there are management issues, which you need to take into consideration. So I think there is a need to educate the public insofar as that is concerned. And I think maybe that's where communities can approach professionals like architects to say, this is what we want to do, share their concept or ideas, and the architect can then crystallize those ideas into something very tangible, because I think that's what we do. In my case, I develop content which I bounce it off with architects, and they'll say it is feasible, it's not feasible. There are geotech issues, there are environmental issues, and people are really not aware of such things. So I think public education in terms of how you develop your own project becomes very, very important, because in the long run, it won't become sustainable. And I think it relates to an example I gave earlier on with regards to a monument that was erected by a community in Duikloof Zone 2 in a park. You go there today, the structure has been demolished because of people not taking care of that, and some not even knowing what is happening. So in my view, the issue of community archives is important in the sense that it really generates interest or inculcate interest in the community. It starts with the community. And I think those who have done sociology will know better that in order to have a community, it starts with an individual, it then becomes a family then becomes a community, and what have you. And I think that is the approach that we may want to take cognizance of. And the issue of Western theories, as you mentioned, yes, it is important to look into that. And I think when we do our work, there are such theories, particularly when you look at your post-colonial theory that challenges the current stereotypes and the like. And I think these are things that we need to expose to students, we need to expose to practitioners so that they know different kind of perspectives that exist, and so that they can help navigate their course when they do this kind of project.
All right, no, we're gonna wrap it up there. And I see someone you might know, Linda Mvusi, made a comment that, thank you, Khensani, your talk brought back memories when you and I worked on Sarah's inaugural panel and our very vigorous heritage defense and propagation. Those were fighting days, not least on social class. We focus attention on working class and underclass structures and spaces in Gauteng. So yeah, you have you have reached out to someone there. Yeah. Thank you so much for everyone for attending this very interesting, engaging talk on heritage. By the way, Khensani Mpumi, who's also online, and myself are developing a short learning program on heritage, which will be offered by the GSA. This will allow us to really expand more on, I know he was throwing up names about Section 34, Section 38, and you're wondering what that is. So we're working on that, and the course will be launched by next year, which will be open to anyone who wants to do it as a short learning program. So yeah, please watch the space concerning that. But with that being said, thank you for your engaging questions. Thank you for interacting. I'm hoping that in our next lecture, we can get some of you to speak. I think it would be interesting to hear your voice and the speakers to feel like, yeah, it's good to write, but it would be really great. I do encourage you to ask questions and switch on the mic and ask them straightforward. So that's for the future, practice lecture talks. Yeah, so that is it for today, and thank you so much for indulging me, and also thank you so much, Khensani. Have a lovely evening, everyone.